everyone. You are listening to She Leads with Carly. I'm your host, Carly Malatsky, and today's episode is with Tatyana Mamut. And for those who have been following along, it's actually part 2 of our chat, where we talk about all things product, from leading a team, aligning your team, and so much more. Tatyana is now the Senior Vice President and General Manager at Pendo.io Adopt, which focuses on driving adoption, transformation, and the future of the digital workspace. Prior to Pendo, though, Tatyana started her career in brand planning, user experience, and design, and of course, dove deeply then into product management. She worked at top companies including IDEO, Salesforce, Amazon Web Services as a director of product management, and Nextdoor, a social networking service for neighborhoods, where she was the chief product officer. Beyond her leadership experience and wealth of product knowledge, Tatyana is also an advisor and board member to many companies, including Braintrust, User Testing, and Sauce Labs. But I would highly recommend listening to Tatyana's first part as we talk about everything that led to this stage of her becoming a top product leader and many more lessons about career pivots, writing your own story, and especially the lessons she learned coming to America as a refugee from Eastern Ukraine, and the values that she brought with her into choosing her own career path. But without further ado, I am going to hand it to Tatyana, and I'm so excited for you guys to learn more. Enjoy. So at this point, had you discovered product management? When did product management come into it? And when were you like, ooh, this is something that I want to go into?
So I think we have to first figure out what is product management, right? So product management, as I defined it, is leading people within an organization to build products for other people that they will love, right? That's product management. It's not like a technology skill set. It's not like agile methodology knowledge, right? It's literally all about people. It's about understanding how to motivate people inside your company to build things for people outside your company, customers, that they will love. So if you define product management that way, I've always been doing product management, right? Like in anthropology, we learn all about how to understand, right? What are people's desires? What are their mental models? What are their cultural frameworks? Anthropology is the fundamental skill set of product management as I defined it, right? And at the end of the day, so, at IDEO, I came into IDEO in 2007, early 2007. And of course, that's the year that the iPhone launched. So all of a sudden, all these companies started coming to IDEO being like, we want to build apps and more digital experiences. And it was like, well, who at IDEO was qualified to lead projects around, building apps and, these new digital experiences? And the answer was like, nobody, because the whole thing was new to the world. And so I was like, but I can figure out how to do it because it's all just people. Like the whole thing is all just people. You figure out what people want, you figure out what they need, you figure out how to build the experience that solves their need better than any other product in the world. And that's great product management. So like with my background in, human understanding, I was more qualified than literally anyone else in the world, right? To start to lead these projects that were around a new to the world technology, which was the iPhone.
So, okay, I can go in a bunch of different directions with this, but I want to focus on this idea where at its core of product management, as you mentioned, is empathy, if you will, right? It's being able to be in the user's shoes and know what they want and build that product. And it sounds simple, but in that essence, how do you think can you build empathy? And if so, how? How do people build their empathy muscles, if you will?
So the number one way is to actually live and work in the place that your customers live and work. And I don't think there's really any real substitute for that, to be quite honest. Field work, right, is the fundamental way in which anthropologists understand other cultures and other mental models. The problem with just asking people questions and trying to build empathy that way is that you always interpret their answers through your own mental models. And so you need to actually live and work with people and feel their pain for a prolonged period of time in order to really, really get past your own mental frameworks. So the hardest thing about empathy is not like, oh, people say this is painful, so I understand that it's painful. It's getting behind that to understand what is the life world of the customer, what is the mental model of the customer, and what are the things that they are experiencing that they can't even say, right? They can't even articulate when you ask them, right? This is like IDEO, I think it's apocryphal, but there's that quote from Henry Ford, which is, if I had asked people what they'd wanted, they would have said a faster horse, right? That is true, right? So there's one model of empathy where you ask people what they want and they say faster horse, and you're like, oh, I really empathize with our users. They really want faster horses, right? The other way, which is the deeper way, is to say, I'm going to go live with people who have a very distinct need for a faster horse and understand what is behind that and what are they actually trying to accomplish and what are their mental models and what are the things they can or can't do, right? So, I think that there's, and then you start to say like, well, do they want a motorcycle or do they want a horseless carriage? Or, so then you have a whole bunch of ways, right, that you ideate that say, I can solve this problem by breeding new horses, by creating a motorcycle, or by creating, a car, basically, an automobile. And then you start to say, but which way is the correct way? The correct way, the only way you can understand that is to really understand, like, well, do people need to carry a lot of things in this faster horse? If so, the motorcycle isn't going to work, right? You need to understand the full life world of the person in order to truly understand what is the best solution for the thing that they need. And there might be things that are completely orthogonal to your question, right? That actually tell you what the right solution is. Like, how many children do they have? If they have a lot of children, the motorcycle isn't going to work.
Right. So you've led a lot of teams, a lot of product teams, exactly what you were talking about, really getting into their shoes, into their behaviors. Do you think many product managers are really diving deep enough? Is this happening, across the board? Is this a mistake that product managers aren't doing? How do you see it now and like the success of really gaining this empathy?
So when I talk to product teams about this, so first of all, my product teams are in there deep with customers. Like, they are literally doing the things that customers need to be doing with our product. They're sitting through POCs. They're like doing the things. They're like sitting with the customers and being like, tell me about your organization. What are you trying to accomplish? Tell me about what's going to get you promoted to the next level. What do you need to show? Like, they're asking all of these questions, and they are doing it over Zoom mostly currently, right? But they're like going deep, right? They're spending like every product manager on my team currently at Pendo is going deep with customers. When I talk to other product leaders who don't necessarily have the background that I have, and I talk about this, they're like, oh, we would love to have the luxury of doing that, but we're just too busy to spend 10 hours a week with a customer. And my response is, what is more important than spending 10 hours a week with a customer? You tell me what is actually more important than spending time with customers. And they're like, well, we have these Scrum meetings and we have these exec presentations. And I'm like, really? Like, somebody else can write the slides for the exec presentations. Just have your VP of product or SVP of product just be like, look, I don't have time to do this. You write these slides because I'm with customers. And I'm like, okay, right? So I'm like, what is more important? What internal meetings are more important than spending time with your customers? And if you really can't find 5 or 10 hours a week out of a 40-hour work week to spend with your customers, there is something very wrong. Very wrong.
Yeah, I love that. I was thinking the same thing, right? Like, I'm sure it's so easy to be like, okay, we have so much else to do it's too hard. It's too much. How deep can we go? So that's, yeah, it makes sense. I want to talk
So
about
the number one
building
thing
product teams.
can I just say one? Yeah, can
Yeah,
I
yeah,
say
yeah, of
one more
course.
thing?
Go ahead.
So always the hard thing in product management, right, is prioritization. And it's not just prioritizing what features to build. As a product leader, it's
Yeah.
also helping to prioritize your team's time, right? You need to be very, very clear to your team about what you prioritize as a leader that they spend their time on. And if you're not telling
Yeah.
them your number one priority is to go deep with customers and make them successful and understand what they need so deeply that you understand better than they understand what they need, you are not prioritizing well as a leader.
Yeah. No, I love that. I want to talk now about, you've mentioned before this idea building product teams, right? And what you look for is a little different than what the, typical product leader is looking for. And so talk to me a bit about that with, different backgrounds, how they come together, why it's important to bring the different backgrounds together. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
So I look for, there's this whole T-shaped people framework, right? Where you want people who are go deep in one area of expertise, but can also empathize and really span across other disciplines and other areas of expertise. And so for me, um, the way that I think about building a product team is about a third, a third, a third.
Okay.
So one third of the product team that I hire are, and again, this can vary a little bit team to team, but overall the framework is a third of the product team should have an engineering background or know something about technology, right? Because especially in very technical products, you might need someone who has that background who can go back and forth with the engineering team and challenge them in appropriate ways. Then you want a third of your team to have kind of a business background, right? Because one of the big things that I think that makes successful product teams, which kind of makes product teams successful, is understanding what are the business results that you're aiming for and how exactly you forecast out the business impact of a particular set of sequencing and prioritization decisions. So you want some folks with a business background. And then the most important part, I would say, of the product team is the third of people who come from a social science background. And the folks with a social science background are the ones who do bring that deep empathy, who help the other, business and technology folks really hone, right, their skill set in terms of listening to customers in product team meetings, right? Those folks with a social science background can often hear things from a different framework and perspective than the folks with business and technology backgrounds and help to reinterpret, right, what customers are actually saying and what customers are actually needing. And then I structure team meetings in very specific ways where I have each product manager talk about what's the one thing that they're concerned about this week and what's the one thing that they are struggling with as they look out into next week. And then I have everyone sort of come in and talk about those issues in the meeting so that you get all three of those perspectives coming together in the most challenging and difficult things that every product manager is struggling with. So, like, you
Wow.
have to have a third of your product team at minimum with a social science background. And what I mean by social science is, psychology, sociology, anthropology, history, right? People who really are deep in understanding how to interpret the psychosocial, things that you're seeing and interpret the customer jobs to be done in a way that is really, you know, based in knowledge and frameworks. In the
Yeah.
same way that, just because, I use an iPhone and I use apps every day doesn't mean that I'm, an iOS expert. Just because you live as a human being in a society doesn't mean that you're a sociology expert, right?
Right.
There's a real discipline and there's a real field of knowledge that you need to bring to product management teams.
Yeah. So I'm curious what you think about, because obviously there's big discussion in product about this idea of having this technical background, right? This computer science technical background to be able to talk to engineers. And even in my experience, graduating from university, I talked to people, and one thing that kept coming up was, learn how to code and then go into product, or it is an essential tool. How do you think about that? Because obviously that's like this 1/3 of your team, but how do you play that into your mindset of coming into building a team?
So I've always had great engineering partners. So
Okay.
product managers don't need to be experts in coding or engineering because we've got the experts in coding and engineering that we're working with. So why do you have the
Yeah.
product team who have the same redundant skill set as the engineering team? Do you really need two engineering teams?
And
Like,
so have you
I
ever
don't know,
found
I don't
it?
even understand that at all. Like, I don't understand. I'm
Okay.
like, but they have engineers that they're working with. Why do you want all the product managers to be engineers? Do you like yes, they need to be able to understand what the engineers are saying, but again, that's the T-shaped people kind of thing, right? I
Right.
mean, I understand what engineers are saying, and what I don't understand, I literally ask them to draw it out for me. I'm like, okay, the data is over here, it needs to get over here. Tell me what the steps are that need to happen to allow. I mean, it's just I mean, most of that is just logic. It's just basic logic, and any
Yeah.
smart person can figure out what engineers are saying if they're saying it well. Most engineering cultures, there's engineering design reviews with documents, and those documents can be read, should be able to be read by anyone. The boxes and arrows, I can follow the boxes and arrows in engineering design documents. It's honestly, I just don't understand the need for redundancy in the product team and the engineering team for them to have the same exact skill set.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I think a lot of it is what you mentioned, this idea of being able to talk to them and relate to them, but as you said, it seems pretty basic, and if you don't know, you ask. So I understand that. Yeah. I want to know, what's the most challenging aspect of being a product leader that you have found that you still struggle today with?
I mean, all the hard problems in product are people problems,
Okay.
right? They're all
Yeah.
people problems.
Yeah.
um, like figuring out, how do you organize the people to actually get to the sequence of feature delivery that you need to do? I mean, at a higher level, apart from the people problems, I think like here's what's easy in product. What's
Okay.
easy is figuring out the right North Star vision for the future. Like everybody has a great idea. Everybody's idea is fantastic. I have never met a product manager who had terrible ideas ever.
Okay.
They're all their ideas are absolutely fantastic. What's hard is how do you get from today to that fantastic idea in a way that we actually build our revenue as we're getting to the fantastic idea. Like we can't wait, right?
Yeah.
If the fantastic idea is going to take 2 or 3 years to build, given our current resources and the real resource constraints that we have, how do we get our revenue to grow between now and 2 years from now in a way that we can actually be alive to see that
Yeah.
fantastic idea come into being? Like that's
Yeah.
really the hard part of product management, right? It's easy to have a great idea. What's hard is to figure out the sequencing of steps to take us from today to that idea, which is kind of like why everybody talks about the MVP, right? What's the MVP? What's the MVP? It's because that's the first step. And that step needs to earn you enough revenue to get to the second step. And that step
Yeah.
needs to earn you enough revenue to get to the third step. That's why you need those three disciplines working together, because that revenue conversation needs to line up to the engineering timing. But what's most critically important is what are people actually going to value and pay for today versus 6 months from now versus 12 months from now versus 24 months from now.
Right. Yeah. So was this a transition? Was this a transition for you? Was this a hard thing to learn? Because obviously, as a product manager, independent contributor, you obviously rise up the rank, director, then chief product officer at Nextdoor. How did you How did you really embody these leadership traits? Was it something you learned? Was it something that came naturally to you?
Um, it's a good question. I think what came naturally to me was like thinking through things very rationally and very logically and breaking things down in a very like rational logical way, which is probably why I was good in economics and loved it as well. But
Yeah.
what actually happened was like at IDEO, I mean, IDEO was just such an amazing training ground for product leadership because what I was able to see, I was able to work with some of the most brilliant Fortune 500, executives in the world, like at Visa and in Genentech and, like at Bridgewater Associates, like some of the most incredible people and executives in the world. And they always came to IDEO because they felt that they couldn't innovate really internally and they needed help externally. And it's not because these people were dumb or incompetent or didn't have a great idea. Again, they all had great ideas.
Right.
And so I had to think about for 7 years, like, what couldn't these people accomplish internally and why were they hiring IDEO? What were we actually, like, what value were we bringing? Because again, like, people have great ideas internally. They do. And they're all incredibly competent, brilliant executives. So what is the piece? Like what is the special sauce, right? That the IDEO team is bringing, right, to these incredibly brilliant Fortune 500 executives.
Yeah.
And what it was that thinking through of like those three sort of concentric circles coming together, right? That what do people need today, right? How are we going to make money and what is the technology? And just really kind of having a structured approach to thinking through that and
Yeah.
giving them the space and the team to work alongside them to really think through, okay, what was the right step one? What was the right MVP? What was the right step two? What was the right, like the team that we brought as IDEO really enabled these organizations to see the path more clearly to innovation
Yeah.
because we were there guiding them through that process. And at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it was, most of the projects were like ideas that they'd had internally anyway, but we just showed them how to move incrementally toward getting to that idea.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost just the process. Like, honing in the actual process. All the information is there. It's how do we take this information and get to an end result that we want. Okay, that's awesome. Have you ever struggled with this idea of motivating so many different mindsets and people on a team on one path, right? Like the engineer, the idea of having a new feature and maintaining this feature, that could be, not so exciting. It could be kind of draining or versus a designer who's excited about it. Have you ever like found misalignment and really had to work on, okay, how do we get them all on one boat, similar mission, similar goal?
Yes, all the time. All the time. Yeah.
What? Yes. What's
Again,
the?
this is product leader. The hard part of product leadership is figuring out how to align and motivate the people internally to build something for people externally that they love. And the only way to align them is to get them really close to the customer. No amount of internal stuff,
Yeah.
process, conversations, communications is as aligning as hearing it directly from the customer. And
So the
so I
engineer as
share
well.
customer. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. In like when I join our, cross product and engineering meetings, what I bring, customer quotes, conversations with analysts and their quotes. What are we seeing in the field, right? What were the interesting sales conversations? What are we hearing customers struggling with, right? What new features did we release that customers really love and celebrating that? I am all about bringing the customer
Wow.
voice to the engineers.
I love that.
And
Okay,
that's really all I
Tatyana.
do when I talk to engineers.
Yeah. No, because I can even think of my experience as an engineer. It had so much, right? It gives meaning to why am I doing this? What am I doing? And rather than getting, a design spec saying, yeah, develop this, code this, okay, great. That's the extent. Like that's not enough, right? So there's so much value to it. I see that a lot. Okay, Tatyana, I have some fun questions for you. First of all, this has been incredible, so really, thank you. So I have to ask though, one, what's your favorite product and why?
Oh, what's my favorite product? I right now I love Skyview, which is an iOS app. Well, I love two apps actually,
Okay.
that I'm obsessed with right now. And so I'm, out kind of near the ocean with my kids, and so just being able to gaze up at the stars and know what we're looking at is pretty
Ooh.
magical, I think. And I love that app, and I use it a lot with my kids. And then there's another app called the Pattern app, which is a Vedic astrology app, which is
Wow.
freaky like accurate. And I just not I don't run my life by it, but it's incredible. It actually like there is something to it, and I just love looking at that app
Wow.
and seeing how the universe is evolving.
And
Yeah,
what's the second one called? The one that you mentioned, the second one?
the pattern,
The pattern. Okay.
the
I
pattern.
want to check that out. What are
hmm
you most proud of? Yes, I got inspiration from, what you said earlier, but what are you most proud of?
Well, I would say that I am most proud of bringing this um, perspective of human centeredness to the technology world and continuing to do that, I think, at higher and higher levels. It started out with the ability and the opportunity to write the Human Centered Design Toolkit with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which was, the first, I think, real layout of the human centered design process, right? Starting with
Yeah.
customers, how do you go into the field, all of those anthropological, I would say, field methods, and understanding how to do product development from there. And I am most proud of the understanding, right? And this evangelization of the human experience in especially technology product development, because we are shaping literally everything we're doing in tech is truly shaping the human experience for the next 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And
Wow,
how
I
we
love
do
that.
it and what we bring to it is really important, right? And to focus on the humans and the impact to the humans, who are our customers, who are, at the end of the day, people, regardless of whether they're in a work context or in a personal context, they have needs, they have feelings, they have desires, right? And the way that you shape these products and you bring them to market does affect how people, experience their lives.
Yeah. No, I love that. I really love that and I couldn't agree more. This may be an overlap, but what is your superpower?
My superpower is creating something from nothing.
Ooh.
So, my superpower is that I can go into a situation where nothing exists, right? No team, no product, and I can figure out what should be the thing that we build and then build the team around it and launch it. So like
Wow.
that's really my superpower, and that's what I do, and that's why I have, pretty why I don't stay at places for very long, because I can do that, and now I can do it with regularity. I know exactly what it takes, and I can do it, within a fairly short time frame.
So I have to ask now, have you ever considered, launching, going your own, doing your own thing, starting from scratch, doing completely your own entrepreneurial adventure?
I definitely have.
Yeah.
And I am very interested in doing something that will have massive impact at scale. So one of the things that I really have the luxury of doing now in, the career that I've had so far is that I get to move, right, from organization to organization and build something new and then have other people run it. And then I build something else that's new that I think is pretty amazing, and then I have other people run it. So whatever I do will be a foundation for others to do something exceptional for themselves, right?
Yeah.
Like the right thing that I would create and that would be passionate about creating would be an organization that incubates, right, other great technology leaders, right, through a process to allow them to bring great things into the world. It would be a platform for enabling the best in product leaders, right, to help them create something from nothing as quickly as possible in the best way possible, right?
Yep.
So I would be able to flex my superpower and scale it to other people and share that gift with them. And that's what I would do if I were to start my own venture.
I love it. I think even just from talking to you, it seems so very clear that not only do you leave them with, you know, the right tenets of product and work ethic and empathy and everything that comes with it, but it's this feeling of, okay, we now have the tools to succeed. Like, we can now take it and run with it. And I think that's like incredible. So I love that. All right, Tatyana, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on to SheLeads. I've enjoyed it and I've learned so much. So really, thank you again.